yourself up.
Space can be lonely. What now? Greetings, Commanders, and welcome to episode 94 of Lave Radio, the show that talks about the universe of Elite and the fantastic community that surrounds it. I'm your host, second technician, Fozza Forrester, and joining me in the orange sidewinder for this episode are the wonderful head of station archives, Mr. Colin Ford.
Good evening, everybody.
Head of station entertainment, Mr. Christopher Jarvis.
Good evening, folks.
And finally, we have an interloper that has come on the show to help us all out for this particular episode. Andrew C., otherwise known as Commander Spike and Commander Hutton Truckers. Hello, Andrew.
Greetings.
Greetings, sir. How are we?
I'm absolutely marvellous, thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, first of all, for coming on the show. We are going to get into a little bit of a discussion around the background simulation of Elite Dangerous, and we had to pull in the ringer. We read the update from Michael Brooks, and there was just no getting around it. We had to bring in a ringer to help us understand what the heck the bearded one was talking about. So before we get into any of that, let's have a quick update on what people have been doing in and out of games, starting with Mr. Jarvis.
Yeah, well, I've been... you'll see tonight, actually, if you're watching the Twitch stream, I am out in a place called Colony. There you go.
Isn't he a comedian? It's just a puppet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in a system called Iota Horologi, basically because I am deep in writing Escape Velocity Series 3 now, and I've found that the best way to actually kind of location scout the character's ongoing journey is I have to actually fly it, and I have to go to the places. So I have sort of moved over to using Elite Dangerous largely for my sort of route plotting, largely because to do it in Frontier, I find Frontier Elite, I don't know how I ever used to play it, because now I just find it really hard, and I find now I can't even jump from one system to another without just getting killed en route. Whereas in Elite Dangerous, I can actually sort of jump around and look at stuff, and so I'm using the Frontier Elite 2 naming conventions for places where there are consistency issues that come up. If you look up Bedaho, for example, in Frontier Elite 2 and then look it up in Elite Dangerous, even though the system is still called Bedaho and the planets are largely the same, the actual names of them and the names of the space stations have changed in the 50 years since Escape Velocity is set. So that's
not
what
actually a brothel planet, is it? Just out of interest?
Bedaho, no. Bedaho is the place where if you eat the indigenous food and drink, you gradually turn gold.
Oh, really?
Which is why I love it. So that's where the gold skins come from. And I did, even though they haven't featured yet in Elite Dangerous Fiction, I'm gonna out him. I messaged Michael Brooks ages ago, and I said, I noticed that on the description for Bedaho it doesn't mention the gold skins. Are they still canon? And he said, yeah, they're still canon. Great.
Awesome. They are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So
just making sure, are we?
Yeah, and so yeah, I've been doing a lot of Escape Velocity stuff, and I've almost got the first 2 episodes completely written. I've discovered there's some stuff in episode 2 that's going to have to get pushed into a different episode because that episode's running a little bit too long for the things that I really need to happen in that episode. So there's some other subplots in that are going to get pulled out and put elsewhere. And might mean Kurlek gets a whole episode to himself at some point. And I've been playing Chaos Reborn as well. And do you know what? I don't know if it's an update. I've just suddenly got a lot worse at Chaos Reborn. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I've been following some of your updates and stuff in the chat channel, and you do seem to suck over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, do you know what?
Not suck. You seem to be having the worst run of luck, shall we say? Considering it's a random dice sort of game, you do seem to be rolling some really bad spells.
I know. I cast a spell at 98% and it failed, which was really upsetting.
Is that not just the point where you have to pack up your toys and go home? I mean, surely.
Do you know what? I didn't have a single unit on the board, and my opponent had like 4, and I was thinking, I'll go for a goblin, and just to make sure, I'll boost it to 98%. No, you can't even have a goblin, Chris. That's so. In the end, I think I just surrounded myself with Tanglevine. Just tried to hope that something good would happen, but it didn't. Yeah, and I was looking
You
at my
have
stats since
recently
the server
criticised.
reset. I haven't had a single
I was
win.
going to say you haven't recently criticised Julian Gollop or any of his design decisions or anything like that. He's not just looking down on you and saying, "I'm going to screw you over, Jarvis."
Yeah. Chris Jarvis base
If
chance
play-
minus 50%.
Yeah, just about to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but basically my stats. I mean, stats don't lie. Since the stats reset, I have 0 wins. I haven't won a single game since the full release. So I'm actually really struggling to complete the single player realms. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I am just sucking really hard at this game at the moment. So they've announced some new spells and some new creatures. So there'll be a whole load of new ways soon this month that I can continue to suck at playing the game, which is good.
Oh, okay. Just quickly, what have they announced?
New spells and new creatures. There's no more detail in it than that. There's an update in game that says there are new speeches, new creatures, and new spells coming. And yeah, that's basically everything I know, frankly.
Okay, fair enough, not a problem. What are you cruising around the galaxy and seeing as you can't fly your Merlin?
I've got an Asp Explorer now. I actually finally upgraded out of my Cobra Mark III and bought myself an Asp, which is really nice. But I keep getting caught out by the slightly slower deceleration of the Asp compared to the Cobra Mark III. So the number of times I've smacked into that little conning tower that's next to the landing pads is just ridiculous. And the first time I tried to land on a planet that had, what was it? It was 1.6 Gs it was. I just smacked straight into the surface because I was really impatiently pointing at the ground and using my afterburners because I'm like, what? I'm 2 minutes from the ground. I can't be bothered to fly for 2 minutes. So I was just afterburnering towards the ground. And then I realised when I tried to turn around and slow down that I couldn't. So patience is a virtue when landing on planets, I think is...
Yeah, gravity sucks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Mr. Ford, what have you been up to, Wee?
Oh, well, in game, I've finally got the big red python up to a spec that I am quite happy with, and I'm now beginning to take on other individuals who are on my kill list. So if you've killed me in the past, you better watch out. Out of game, I've been far more pleasant, and I've been working with Dave Hughes for the last 4 weeks or so with his Elite Encounters role-playing game, and looking to see whether or not we've got overlap with the miniatures game that I was working on at Fantasticon. Mm-hmm. And the good news is that there does seem to be an awful lot of overlap. And what we've been doing, we've been collaborating a lot on getting the Elite miniatures and his ship-to-ship combat compatible, so that if you wanted to, you could basically either play the miniatures game, or if you're playing the RPG, you could integrate the miniatures game into the RPG combat if you needed to. And so far so good. I think Dave is very pleased with the progress that we're making. I'm quite happy about it as well. And hopefully we'll be starting to play test probably around March. We've got a few little niggles to sort out, and I've got a few more miniatures to paint. But apart from that, progress is good.
Okay, so is this going to be instead of a mechanic of doing that within the role-playing game itself? Because I know that Dave was actually working on a way to do fighting in ships as well as walking around.
Basically, when it comes to ship-to-ship combat, you have a choice. You will be able to either play it narratively, which is basically you and the GM are deciding how the roles are running, how you describe how the combat is going. In your typical GM fashion, your standard role-playing fashion. But like in past role-playing games like Star Wars and Star Trek, you have the option of using miniatures and a miniatures war game with some rule changes to the miniatures war game, which will allow you to play your characters as one of the ships. And that's the kind of model that we've gone for. So if you go to ship combat, it's up to you whether or not you want to go ahead with the narrative version or whether or not you want to break the models out. And that's mostly what we'll leave up to the players to decide.
Cool. So you say you're going to be sort of playtesting March, April sort of time. Does that mean that you should be up and running by LaveCon?
Well, actually, I mean, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that we get something together by then. I know that on Selazon's Twitch stream and on his YouTube channel, if you go see that, you'll go see the latest updates on the RPG. He is given himself a soft target of having the RPG ready for LaveCon.
Right.
Which will be either, I think it'll be the ebook version. So yeah. Oh, and if anybody's made some requests for Selazon, I advise you get in contact with him, because if you haven't been in contact with him, he might have forgotten by now. So you've got to flag up the fact that you wanted a hard copy or something daft like that. But things are, I think, things have been quite helpful over the last month or so. He said that he's managed to do at least 6 months progress in the last 4 weeks with the work that we've been doing together. So I feel quite good that we've made some decent progress.
Great stuff. Brilliant. Okay, Andrew, what have you been up to? Maybe actually, why don't we just sort of back up a bit? Why don't you give people a little bit of an overview as to what sort of role you play within the game, how long you've been playing it, were you there from the original Kickstarter, what sort of ship you fly, and what you're involved in game?
Oof, okay. Been on since day 2 of the Kickstarter after various sort of pledge levels and going up and up. Ended up being a member of the DDF and then pledging for my son to have an account and getting him up to premium beta access. So been playing since right at the very start. At the moment, I am flying around in a Ferdlands. That was a recent acquisition. I've actually grown to quite like it. I parked a Python up that I didn't really like for combat. So the stuff we're doing in game at the moment is a lot of combat stuff. So the Ferdlands is turning out really, really good. Anything I do a bit of everything in game. I don't just do combat or trading. I sort of mix everything up. If I find I'm getting a little bit bored of doing one thing, then I'll just find something else to do and go and try something else, basically. I do play a second account. So for the Hut and Truckers, we bought an additional account so we could create the private group, and then I used that account when I was doing the Sagittarius A run in my main account. When I got bored, I would play as the Hut and Truckers account. So he's just been upgraded to do some mining in a Type 7, which I hadn't tried before. So he's parked up somewhere trying his hand at mining.
Cool. Okay, and you mentioned the Hut and Truckers. What's your involvement with that bunch of reprobates?
It started sort of by accident. I mean, it was all from LaveCon last year, and when sort of conversation started around that, and then sort of David started off with the rare item. For the Hut and Mug rare item being created, and I just messaged David via Facebook just saying, have you looked? Frontier have said they're doing stuff about player groups. Have you thought about doing something for the Hut and Truckers? And then he goes, welcome to the Hut and Orbital Truckers political information team. That is you and another commander called Russ Pitcher, who's a friend of mine, Commander Evenstar, and that's how our involvement started. So I help guide some of our actions with regards to some of our sort of taking over system attempts, ably assisted by a team of spies that have 5 or 6 of us at the moment, that they go around and gather loads of information. So all of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about tonight is basically off the back of all of their hard work that just makes me look quite good.
Great stuff. Perfect. Okay, well, from my side of things, I've obviously been AWOL for quite some time. I think I've explained in a few episodes that a change in job roles for me means that I'm now travelling up and down the country and across the island. So I have not had as much time sat in front of my PC playing Elite Dangerous as I would have liked, which kind of actually works out quite well for this episode, because one of the topics that we're going to quickly touch on is the reception for Elite Dangerous Horizons, which seems to be a little bit mixed. So hopefully you guys on the show can actually sort of bring me up to speed with what stuff I've missed and how this stuff is actually going down. So without further ado, let's quickly jump into that particular topic, Elite Dangerous Horizons and how it's being received. Mr. Ford, what's your experience? How do you feel about Horizons, just quickly, and then what sort of reaction are you noticing out there on the interwebs?
Well, at the moment, I'm actually quite chuffed with Horizons, but then you'd probably expect me to say that. Admittedly, I think the reason that I'm still chuffed with it is because I don't play it as much as a lot of other people. So everything that I'm doing at the moment is still brand new. I've got missions types that I've still got to try. I've got new worlds to explore, and I must admit, when I'm coming in and landing on a planet, or driving around with a buggy, I haven't got bored of that yet. I've been driving around picking up materials and things like that, and suddenly realised, hang on, I've been doing this for an hour. And didn't realise. So, if I'm kept interested with that, I don't think I've got the same frustration levels with it, so that a lot of people I've noticed have flagged up.
Okay, so are you, like myself, are you one of these people that has sort of the lifetime expansion? So you basically got Horizons free of charge, or did you have to fork out cash for it?
No, I got the free of charge upgrade, because I think everybody didn't everybody in Lave Radio get that? I think we'd all back to that level anyway.
Well, that's the thing. So it maybe puts a slightly different slant on it in terms of some of the stuff that I'm seeing out there on the web, in terms of the criticism for it, in terms of it being a little bit shallow on content, and Frontier Development's basically it's basically getting their cash and then having to earn it over the course of the season and stuff like that. If you haven't paid for it, like most of us on the show haven't actually paid for it, we're all getting it as part of our initial contributions. It might be hard for us to actually be overly critical of it. Jarvis, how do you feel about it all? Yeah,
I'm sort of with you. I almost feel like we can't really do the sort of negative side of it justice, because we don't really have anyone necessarily involved with the show on a regular basis who's actually had to buy Horizons. But I'll be honest, I did find myself, I had a friend who still hadn't sort of got Elite yet, and he was asking me before Christmas whether he should spend the 40 quid on Horizons, or whether he should pick up Elite for 10, Elite Dangerous for 10 quid. And I really struggled to give him a lift pitch as to why Horizons was particularly better. And I think that I think you've read one of the same quotes maybe as me about the sort of financial model. I think it's really weird to pay Frontier 40 quid at the beginning of a year for a game on the basis that over the course of the next year they're going to make it good. And this is we've said this before. It's the same problem we had with the original Elite Dangerous, that actually the base game as it came out was quite basic in terms of content. Mm-hmm. But in some respects that didn't matter, because we were all excited about flying our favourite ships again, and the trading model was basically there, and the combat model was basically there, which for those of us that were huge fans of the Elite series, that was kind of the main thing that we wanted, and everything else is kind of making that nice. So Elite Horizons is really, it's giving us the planetary landings that we really wanted. But again, maybe like the first release of Elite Dangerous, it's a bit thin on the ground. Now, we'll just repeat what I said last week. It looks to me, from looking from the outside, because I don't understand it yet, that there is a lot of content on planet surfaces, and there are a lot of specific missions to do with planet surfaces. And I don't think I fully understand it. And I think if Frontier are bad at anything, it's signposting. It's the unidentified signal sources all over again. They are very bad at signposting where the gameplay is. And I think there is a lot going on in all those different kinds of surface installations. And, oops, don't do that. And, there is a lot going on. There is a lot going on there, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily find it. But I do agree with I think the number one most helpful comment on Elite Horizons on Steam basically says, it's a great game, but it's really, in some respects, it's stupid to give Frontier 40 quid at the beginning of the year and then expecting them to spend the year fixing it. And someone earlier on the Skype thread was saying to me, is it not the same as a season pass? The thing is, with a season pass, there is a contract there and there is a promise of delivering content throughout the season. Whereas actually, this promise isn't quite the same. It's 40 quid for a game that isn't quite finished. And Frontier have said, yes, we're going to be adding to it throughout the year. But if they don't add to it throughout the year, I'm not suggesting for a moment that Frontier would renege on what they're planning to do. But I think that there is no implied contract for them to have to produce anything else for the game. Anything they decide to leave out, they're going to be pushing into a third year effectively of subscriptions. And actually, I was actually a little bit pleased when I saw the show notes and I saw a link to a bit more detail about some of the stuff that's coming. But when I saw the newsletter and the planned releases for the Horizon season, a couple of them left me feeling a bit, I don't really care. And that's a really harsh criticism. But I think if I look at something like, avatar manipulation, I don't care what my commander looks like, or at least I do. It'd be really nice if it was like if as part of a release there was a bullet list of about 20 things, and at the bottom it said, by the way, you can now decide what your commander looks like. Great. But if it's like a Wings scale release, now you can make your commander look bald and a little bit greyer than maybe he did before. I don't. For me, that's not a quarter year's worth of anticipation. That's going into that.
What is a quarter year's anticipation? What sits pretty with you in terms of what they can produce?
Walking around in first person.
Okay, so that's a quarter of the year.
Yeah, no. That's harsh. But what I'm saying is, if you were to tell me that this year's 4 releases were, fighters in your cargo bay for quarter 1, okay, I'm a little bit meh about that. But it's a nice thing, and it's probably not that difficult in the grand scheme of things for them to do. Second release, multi-crew co-op. Middle of the year, co-op crews. Hopefully it plays something a bit like either Pulsar or Artemis, but obviously in Elite Dangerous. That'd be great. And then towards the end of the year, you're going to be able to get out and walk around your ship. For me, if those were the headline features for this year, I would be happy as Larry. But I can't get until we get much more detail about what the gameplay is in looting and crafting. I can't get excited about crafting just for the sake of it. Fighters, being able to carry a small fighter around, I'm probably not at the end of the game where that really makes a difference to me. Like I say, player avatars, not that bothered. Multi-crew, yeah, really looking forward to that. But I mean, I just think if you go on Steam and you look at this high rated, it's a negative review, and the guy says, look, I love Elite Dangerous, but even at the end of the review, he says he can't see why Elite Horizons at the moment is worth 40 quid when you can get Elite Dangerous, which, as he rightly says, is the best space combat and trading simulator currently in existence anywhere. When you can pick that up for pocket change. And that's the issue I have with Horizons. I don't think they haven't, they've made improvements, they've made the game better, but that's for the people who are along for the whole ride. For someone who just bought Elite Dangerous and is now going to have to spend 30 quid to buy Horizons, I couldn't have it in my heart to sell it to them. Do you know what I mean?
No, I understand that. Colin, what's your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, there's been an awful lot of complaining about this price point on all the other, the non-elite boards, if you like, like the independents, like Massively, PC Gamer, and SpaceBattles.com, 3 of my regular haunts. And the whole impression that you get is that they're just looking at this one price point of £40 or £30 if it's an upgrade, and they can't get past that. I don't think it's even got through to people that there's more content coming. It's the equivalent of paying for an MMO, which you pay your monthly sub and you get upgrades as you go along. Say, for instance, if I was still playing SOTOR, I'd be still paying something like 80 quid for I think it's 80 quid for 6 months or something like that. But I'm paying that up front, and I know that I'm getting upgrades and more expansions as things go on. But I don't think people see it that way. I think they were seeing, a DLC, that you get that for about 20 quid, don't you? And when they see the price, they just can't get their head around it and say, no, it's not worth it. And it also goes back to the very fact that Frontier, they like you to discover things they've put in. And I think in this case it might be working against them, because everyone is looking, it's the good old space trucker syndrome. If you go and do the Space Euro Truck Simulator constant trade run, you get burnt out, and you burn out quite quickly. The main problem that you've got is that you've got to break away, and you've got to force yourself to break away from doing those trade runs and try and experiment and do something else. And I don't see people doing that. They're just going to grind the missions and grind the trading and suddenly realize there's not much different here. But if you go looking at points of interest, then things start getting a little bit more interesting.
It'd be interesting to know. It'd be interesting to know because it is an issue over the price point, really. If they'd made it 10 quid 4 times a year, whether or not the reaction would have been different.
I don't think the reaction would be this bad, to be honest.
10 quid for the landing on planets and driving around in buggies, great fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you think about it, 10 quid is also what you'd pay for like a gold ship skin, which people pay quite happily, and possibly pay 4 of those a year without batting an eyelid.
Yeah, but then we're all going back to the subscription model, because the one problem that they do have is for this particular upgrade, there is one big cut-off point. You can say, right, if you've got Horizons, you've got the ship landing module, so that means you can land on planets. How are they going to split it so that all of a sudden your avatars are only available to this lot, or or only these ships can remote control fighters? That puts a whole lot of extra time and resources in developing the game just to fragment it even more, which...
yeah, but they did say that the base game, the base simulation, was going to get some of these additional things regardless of whether or not people paid for the updates. So possibly things like that, where it is going to be difficult to integrate without having a everyone gets everything mentality. Maybe those will be some of the elements that people get for free. So who knows? Andrew, what's your thoughts on all of this, buddy?
Just going back to the price point thing, I've responded. I've seen people complaining about it as well on Facebook, and I've responded to a few posts. And the way that I've always looked at it is, if you go to the cinema or go to a football ticket, Premiership football ticket, it's going to cost you 40 or 50 quid for an hour and a half's potential entertainment, depending on who you support. Whereas, I support Newcastle, so it's definitely not good value for money. But from an elite point of view, if you look at how many hours you play a year, and if you're paying 40 quid. Now they're giving us the stat in, so you can see how many weeks and hours and stuff you've played, and it's quite bad if you show your wife. You don't want to see that. But from a sort of price per hour of entertainment, it's stonkingly good value. And then where it's slightly different from subscription as well, because it is looking like subscription, but the one big difference is, if you don't want to pay anymore, you don't pay, but you keep the game that you've got. So if people don't want to pay for it, they can carry on playing Elite, the sort of base game, to their heart's content, and they don't have to give Frontier anymore. It's not like you've stopped paying, therefore we cut off all your access. So I think they've handled it a really good way. But people are always going to complain and say, "Oh, it's too much money," because they don't want to pay. But from my point of view, it's stonkingly good value, because you get such good number of hours entertainment out of it.
No, I think the main problem that people have got, though, is that the main problem is the new players who are coming in for 40 quid, yet it seems that people who are upgrading are having to pay 30 quid. The difference is, I think a lot of people who are paying for the Horizons upgrade feel that a bit hard done by, because they think, hang on, that I paid almost 40 quid for this game. How come all of a sudden I'm having to shell out another 30? So that's 70 quid I'm having to pay out. Yet Mr. Newbie here comes along and he can get the whole lot for 40.
But I think that's just I think and I don't think they handled it brilliantly, but I think that's a timing issue of the purchase. I know they adjusted the prices as it got closer, so it was the full price, and then as it got closer to when the other one was going to launch, it's like they warned you that you can pay this much extra now and start playing the game now, or if you want, you can wait 2 months and you can pay 40 quid and get everything for 40 quid and not have to pay that extra. So it wasn't brilliant, but they did at least let people know, look, if you want to wait, that's absolutely fine. You can have it for cheaper. But if you want to play now, it is going to cost you a bit more because you're playing now and not waiting 2 months.
Mm. Well, all I know from watching from most of the message boards, the kind of people who have bought Elite and not actually season passed it like we have, or got the lifetime pass, they seem to be thinking, right, okay, I'm going to stick with the base game for the moment,
yep,
and I'm going to see whether or not it comes up in a Steam sale quite soon.
Mm. I go back to agree with what Jarvis was saying before when he was chatting to his friend. I would struggle to say what's currently in Horizons that makes that extra money worth it at this point in time. Now, I'm sure we've seen it with what they did with the base game. The base game is now fantastic. It improved massively over its first year, and I'm sure they'll do the same with Horizons. But yeah, so I agree. I think people probably will be waiting and see if it goes down in price later on in the season.
Mm. And isn't the problem we've got with this game is that, yeah, it is so vast. It is trying to be something for everybody. That they're always going to have some damp squibs out there in any season. So last year, I mean, for me, CQC was a big bucket of meh, but I could see where people would like to engage with that. Likewise, Power Play for me was a big old bucket of what the hell is going on with this. Those were two elements that, for me, gave me no extra enjoyment to the game at all. Added nothing really to the game universe for me. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out in Horizons. I mean, if it's just prettifying, that's not a word. Prettyifying? Definitely not a word. Enhancing your avatar and playing dolls with your avatar and putting makeup and, I did all of that in Eve, and it wasn't much fun then either, so that, as Jarvis says, if that's going to be another quarter's worth of updates, then that goes on my meh list, unfortunately. But the multi-crew thing, I think, from Horizons could be the real sort of standout feature. It does something that we haven't seen in any other previous iterations of Elite. It's doing something we haven't seen really in any other sort of space simulation. I know Star Citizen are talking about it, but if they get that right, then that could potentially be, the season, justified there and then. So. Anybody got any more things to add on this before we move on with the rest of the show?
Well, I was just going to put one final point in, and that's that it's not just these big updates that are coming. We've had all year little refinements, little changes to the system, to the user interface, which to the mission system, and of course there's always in the background this big plot that's going on. That's the unidentified artifacts and things like that. That's all happening and bubbling away quite nicely in the background, and a lot of people are just ignoring that. But we know it's there, and that will come into play, I think, and be more noticeable this year. I do genuinely think that there's going to be a lot more going on than just those big 4 updates that mentioned in the newsletter.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, the other thing, obviously, again, I have been out of the universe for a long time, so coming back and doing a bit of prep work for this show, there seems to be an issue, and again, this could possibly feed into the content that's going on with Horizons and landing on planets, but there does seem to be an issue out there at the moment with some bugs in the game, and specifically around missions. What's going on there?
Well, this is... Yeah.
Go on, Chris.
Sorry, go on, Andrew.
I was just going to say, we've in the tracking of the missions that we've been doing to to help with some of the work that we're going on. We've definitely seen issues with the multi-part missions, so where it's pick up this and then you go somewhere and then it gives you the second part to either go and get something else and take it somewhere else. We've seen quite an issue with some of those where the person you're meant to meet just doesn't turn up in the second or third part of the mission. So we've actually told the guys that are working on some of the background stuff for us to actually just ignore those missions for the meantime. So that's what we've experienced so far with them.
Okay, and are those are those missions that you can sort of ring fence or spot on the bulletin boards?
Yes.
Or are they? They are. Okay.
Yeah,
what type of missions are they?
Well, they'll show up. So they usually look like sort of courier. They look like courier missions, but it will say we're looking for a reliable commander to go and deliver to this. You'll get more information when you get to your destination. So they're easy to spot, and we're just been leaving those alone for the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
You'll also notice on the icon they've got a number of dots underneath. And I think that from what I've played of those missions so far, the number of dots is the number of stops that you have to do.
That's interesting.
So, well, I don't know, because I think the last four times I've done it, there've been 4 dots, there've been 4 stops. I've yet to see whether or not I'm right, whether or not it's 3 dots for the third one, but that's the way I've seen it so far.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a problem with the missions with some of the cargo ones that are labelled as mission specific. Now, this isn't the ones where they give you the cargo. That seems pretty straightforward. They give you cargo, and that is the one you have to deliver. You can't lose it and then just go and rebuy it. The ones I've had problem with is when it's, when you have to go and get things like pick up like black box or something. Mm-hmm. What it'll say is it'll say you have to pick up a black box mission specific. Now, you can fly around USSs and weak signal sources and salvageable wreckage, and you can pick up all the black boxes in the world, and the game sometimes won't give you one that you can actually use to complete that mission. There's obviously some particular scripting in mind. They want you to go to like a particular wreck site in order to pick up this black box, and I don't know. It's hard for me to say how it should work because I haven't seen it work yet, so I don't know what aspect of it is broken.
Well, I would recommend that you also drop by distress signals, because I have found every now and again you come across a destroyed ship at a distress signal.
I've done them all.
Have you? All right, fair enough.
I would say I've filled my cargo bay. I haven't filled my cargo bay because obviously it's an ASP. But I had about 14 or 15 black boxes in my hold, and if you change the filters to be mission cargo, nothing shows up. And if you go back to the person that gave you your job, the give black box or give cargo button just doesn't highlight. So there's obviously something there that's not working. And I have tweeted Frontier Help about that today, and they've said that they're aware of it and they are looking into the problem.
Damn, we don't.
Which is nice because
looking from them.
Yeah, which is nice because the threads on the forum hadn't been responded to, so I didn't know whether or not they'd pick them up.
Okay, that's interesting. What about again, having not seen much going down onto planets, how's the integration with missions in terms of getting missions and space stations that have a planetary aspect to them working? Is that seamless? Is it interesting? Is it something you guys are getting involved in?
Well, I am, obviously. I mean, they're kept separate on the bulletin board. They've got surface-specific missions as a little section. So, basically, you just look down there and say, right, okay, they want a delivery at this place, or they want to run drop off something somewhere else. But the main thing I've found is the best planetary missions you find on planets themselves. That's where you get the ones where you want to raid the bases, or people say, can you test our defenses? Those kind of things are a lot more interesting than people let on, and I think they're being missed out on a bit. Although, admittedly, I think some of the description could be a bit clearer, because you sort of say, "Oh, right, you need to shut this stuff down," and you go, "Okay," you get there, and you got no idea how you do it.
How are you supposed to do it? Is this where you go and shut down generators by blowing them up?
Yeah, it's effectively, it says shut down the laser turrets, and you sort of, I've tried shutting down the laser turrets, and then you realise, oh no, it's shutting down the generator behind the laser turrets, or accessing this particular data link, and I still haven't got my head around exactly how you do it yet.
Okay, So, but they are there, they are working, but you think that they're basically, there's better stuff to get, there's better fodder if you actually go down and get them from the planetary surface rather than
I
get the
would
ones
say,
from space.
yes, I'd say that if you want interesting planetary missions, you get them from planets. I think from most of the ones in space stations, you get them to be delivery missions.
Right. Okay. Interesting point. Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up here is a section I've entitled From Hero to Zero. And I know this is a story that's been posted on the forums and it's also been sent directly to us. And I thought it was quite an interesting topic to just pick up on. I'm not going to mention the commander's name because there's a chance that the interwebs might not be too kind for him after I've read the story, but I think there might be a few people that might start pointing and laughing at his misfortune. But
You're not going to read
basically
it
the gist of this. No, I'm not. So basically, this guy was out there having played the game. He's grinded his way all the way up to an anaconda. Then in Horizons, he's basically accepted a low-level 50k mission to deliver silver from point A to point B and meet this NPC. Similar, actually, I think, to what you guys are talking about here. So it sounds like he might really have picked up on one of your buggy missions. So he's got into the system, saw his contact, followed him and dropped out of Super Cruise and found absolutely nothing there waiting for him. Then he says within a couple of seconds he was surrounded by 25 vultures who attacked and destroyed him in less than 10 seconds. At this point he realises he's around about 300k short of his insurance for his ship and gets busted all the way back down to a Sidewinder. Needless to say, he is not in a happy place at the moment. So, as this potentially was a mission glitch, should he try appealing to Frontier? With 25 vultures for a 50k worth on the mission, is it the fact that the mission was out of balance completely? Should he have that many ships attacking him when the mission itself is only worth 50k? And let's talk a little bit around whether or not the hero to zero mechanic within the game is too harsh. Should there be an option in there to get another ship with insurance? Maybe something slightly less than the one that you couldn't afford. And then, remind me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there something about getting a loan at one stage as well? Wasn't that a DDF topic that you could put yourself straight into debt?
Yeah. There is a loan there. They increased the amount, didn't they? So after it used to cover you probably for like up to a Cobra, but I think after a number of incidents, I suppose they upped it. It goes up to like 700,000 now, I think, or something. The loan amounts, I think, it's probably just enough to cover an ASP.
Okay, so I mean, it's also worth noting before we go into the discussion on this is that he has been busted down to zero before. He had a 98 million credit Type 9 that he didn't.
Oh,
he's one of those people that things just happen to, is he? Do you think?
Yeah, he's one of these. He's one of these people that you find in the galaxy. He's one of these galaxy's unfortunate people. So, let's start off the thing. We're not going to judge him. Well, maybe we are going to judge him, but let's see how we get on. Let's start with you, Jarvis. What's your thoughts on this particular scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any comments on the mission. I do find it very strange that the game, that if you don't make your insurance for a big ship, that you get busted all the way back to like the starting ship. And I know that the standard internet response for this is don't fly without insurance. But if you think about it, if you get killed with enough money for your insurance and then you buy your ship back, you then might not have enough money for your insurance because you've just paid it. You're still going to have to go out and fly. You're still going to have to do missions. So there are always going to be scenarios where you have to make back your insurance money. No, I mean, not always, unless you always make sure that you have twice as much insurance as you possibly need. But I think in any scenario where you say you have to fly with insurance, it's not always possible. But one of the things that this guy said was a real problem about getting the money back is that because he has high like elite levels in combat and trading and all the other things, having been in a bigger ship, the game treats him as if he's like a dangerous commander, but he's in a Sidewinder. So the game is throwing enemies at him that he should really be in an Anaconda to take on, and he's finding that he can't leave a station without getting destroyed by NPCs because he's just not in a big enough ship. And that is a problem. But I do also think that it's very strange that you can't. It's very strange that you you have to. It's either all or nothing. What I'd like to see is 3 options. I'd like to see you be either able to get your ship back, or go for the free Sidewinder. Or the other option, of course, is like, I'm trying to think of the words, 75%. So, like, you have an option where it says, okay, we'll give you credits to the value of 75% of your ship. Now, that means if you've just lost an Anaconda and you can't afford the insurance, you're not going to get straight back in an Anaconda. But you're going to get back in something that's the tier just below, that's going to enable you to work your way back to it, without too many problems. And I think for me, that would be the way to go for this insurance problem, because I can't think of any other game which dumps, unless it's like an Iron Man mode, there's no other game which is going to drop you all the way back to level 1. Because if you think about like an RPG or an MMO or something, if your character dies and you lose all your equipment, it's not really an issue, because you've still got your player skills. So you've still got your character skills, you've still got your levels, you've still got, whatever else you've got going on. Oops-a-daisy. Oh, never mind. So I'm just blowing up my ship. You're about to watch me lose my ass but not have the insurance for it.
There's irony for you.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, in that game, so you can go and buy some equipment, and it'll be your character skills that save you, and you can just rebuy some stuff. But if when you died in an MMO, you lost all your kit and got dumped back down to level 1, you'd be very unhappy.
I think something that I'd like.
What's
Sorry,
that?
I was just going to say, I think an option I'd like to see there is, and I don't know whether it applied to him, I'm guessing not, because he's gone back all the way to the Sidewinder, was to be able to, if you can't afford the insurance for the ship that you've got, but you've got other ships cashed up, you should potentially be able to sell those ships to cover the insurance. So if he's lost his Anaconda, but he's got a Python parked up somewhere, he's like, hold on, let me flog my Python, and that will give me the money to cover the insurance. I mean, if it's happened to him twice, he's got no spare ships. I'm slightly sort of mean and thinking the fact that he's been burnt once before, he should have been slightly more cautious. I know what you're saying before about there are situations if you've just lost it and then you haven't got the insurance, but you could then sell that ship and put yourself in a smaller ship that you've got more than enough money for to bring it back up. So if it's happened to him more than once, I am slightly unsympathetic, but I agree there are some more options that could certainly be slightly nicer to people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trade in my ships when I buy new. I always buy, so far I've bought them all outright. So I know that if I lose this ship, I've got like a heavily upgraded Cobra Mark III sitting somewhere that I just need to, I just need to go and get it. But yeah, I find it very difficult to kind of speak with authority about the high end of the game that flies Anacondas and things, because I've never been there. So.
Okay, fair enough. Colin, your thoughts on all this?
Well, I must admit, this is the one heartbreaker that everybody is scared of the most, isn't it? Is when you get to that top level of, I'd say, Python or Fer-de-Lance or above, and you've just upgraded, and you are basically flying missions with your teeth grinded, just hoping that you can get through, and you're not busted down to a Sidewinder. That for me actually adds an extra bit of edge to the game, which I kind of enjoy. But I must admit, I have been busted down once, and that is such a horrible feeling. And it's one of those moments when you just relaunch in the Sidewinder again, you go, do I walk away at this moment in time? Because it's happened to Grant as well. He said it was an absolute heartbreaker.
Well, you can imagine, because there is an element of grind to this game. So to have to put those physical hours back into the game, and knowing that it's taken you 60 hours or however long to get to that particular point, and knowing it's going to take you just as long, because there's no shortcuts to some of these things. There is a grind element that just takes as long as it takes. The whole thing about EVE Online, where they tell you don't fly what you can't afford to lose. For having done it twice. Yeah. But I do think, I would be I'd be up for chancing my arm and taking this. Well, probably not that we mentioned it onto the radio, but I would have chanced my arm with Frontier and say, this was a glitch. And whilst this glitch was occurring, these guys just happened to, and I wasn't paying attention because it was a glitch. And look what happened to me. Any chance that you could give my keys to my Conda back, sort of thing. I would definitely give it a go, but whether or not they're going to give it back to him, I don't know.
If it is one of these glitched missions, that you certainly ask whether you put in an appeal and say, was it a glitched mission that caused this? And if it was a glitched mission, then I would hope that Frontier would do the right thing and say, yeah, it was glitched. That was a bug on our part. Here, have your keys back. But if it was one of these sneaky missions which I've dropped into, and all of a sudden I think, oh, gold canisters, I'll go scoop one of them. And, what are these anacondas doing?
I agree with Colin's point before, though. Just it's slightly unrelated, but about flying with not having enough money to the insurance, and also flying without shields, which I've done knowingly earlier on in my pilot's career when you're trying to get that extra bit of money, and it certainly does add a level of excitement that doesn't exist in the game in any other way, because you're gambling everything on just trying to maximise that trade run, and it is quite exciting. Don't quite think I'd do it out in my A-spec third lens, though.
No, wear your brown pants.
Yeah. In fairness, I think most people might have had that experience when they first got into the Type 9, because obviously in the Type 9 you could make yourself a lot of extra money. I think I probably did about 5 or 6 runs in the Type 9 without any insurance, but the problem with the Type 9 is it doesn't handle like any other ship in the game. And when you're scraping it off the docking ports, knowing that it's not insured, suddenly the whole, that pressure of docking that we haven't really seen since the original Elite back in 84, suddenly comes flooding back to you, and you start getting these sweats on and thinking, Christ, 96 million credits worth of stuff, and I'm scraping it across the top of this docking port. So, no, I agree. The flying without insurance and flying without shields is definitely one of those wonderful, unique, sphincter twitching moments that the game has for us. So, but okay, let's leave that there. Let's leave that commander and his misfortunes to one side and move on to the main topic of the show, which is the dev update that has come out from the wonderful, hairy Mr. Brooks. And this is all around the background simulation. Now, obviously, you'll know that this show is all assisted with the Hutton truckers. So we've had some experience of getting involved with having a minor faction and trying to flip some systems and doing some various things for the good of the group. But the one element that has always bamboozled, baffled, completely and utterly confused the heck out of me as we've been trying to do this is what the hell we're doing it for. Or let me put it a different way. What the hell are we doing that's going to have any effect on the game? This whole sort of background simulation that Frontier tell us is running there and doing this, as always with Frontier, it's nice and clear and everybody understands what the heck's going on and it's all well documented, or maybe not. But this time, Michael Brooks has gone out there, he's given us an update, he's given us a little bit more flesh on the bones as to what is actually happening in this background simulation and what sort of things people need to do with their player groups in order to actually take over a system or take over some of the system assets. So, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind, you understand this stuff far better than I do. How about just giving us a quick sort of background as to what sort of things it is possible for a minor faction to do and how you can now go about it with the information that we've got from Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, so okay, so player groups can contact Frontier and request to have a minor faction created, which was what we did for the Hutton Truckers. You pick sort of what type of group, so what sort of legal state you are, whether democracy or anything like this. You pick a system where you want to be your home base, which station you'd like. Frontier review it, and then when they do some server-side changes, you'll then appear in the game. And so player minor factions will get given a controller of a station in the system that they've requested to be in, assuming it's been approved. So from there, you are, depending on what system you're in, so if you look at the minor factions in the system panel on the right-hand side, when you're flying through a system, you'll see anywhere from sort of 3 to 7, we think the maximum is. And they'll have different influence ratings. Now, the faction that has control of the largest station or outpost in the system, which is typically the one that's got the largest population, is deemed to be in control of that system. So depending on what you've got, you can then perform actions to either take over other outposts or stations in your system, and then if you get to the point where you're in control of a system, which means you have control of all the stations in the system, you can then go into an expansion state where your faction can then start to appear in other systems, and you can spread your influence out across systems. So that's roughly what it's there for. I mean, it's there to give players something else to do. It's there adding to the depth of the game that sort of was apparently never there at the beginning, but I think always has been. But so it's to give. So if you don't want to do just trading or power play is probably a bit much, it gives something slightly. I think the minor faction stuff is a lot more focused than power play because it's more intimate. It's more focused in a single area, and you're more personally attached to you because we've created the Hutton Orbital Truckers Cooperative. That is our little baby, so we then look after it more, and I think it's a lot more to get attached and sort of more deeper involved with it.
Great stuff. So, I mean, the stuff that Michael's posted in the graphs and charts, saying what particular actions have what particular effect on your influence. Did we know this before, or is this new information?
So. That one little chart in the start of that post that's not very big on my screen. He sort of that took us about 3 months to work out most of that, and he's actually given more information because of the figures and stuff that he's given. So when we started our minor faction in the game, one of the things that we set up. So there were some commanders, part of the Hutton Truckers, that were very sort of active in looking at this. So we sort of created the Hutton Truckers spy team, and they had sort of the remit to go and start running any missions that they saw, so we could track what the influence was. So we've got, as most factions have, we've got spreadsheets all over the place tracking what does what. So I think we've got a list of over 300 missions that we ran between the sort of 6 or 7 of us, looking at what type of mission it was, where it was in, were we in control of the system at the time, what the state was, and then to see what effect that mission had. So when we were in, so we could then tell the rest of the truckers via sort of the Facebook and the website and the radio show, look, this is what we want to do, these are the type of missions that it's good to do, or these are the kind of actions that it's good to do. Because what changes and what the chart sort of shows is the missions and the actions that you perform vary depending on what state your minor faction is in. So a minor faction can be in civil unrest, in war, civil war, lockdown, expansion, famine, and outbreak. So depending on what state you're in is what and where you are in relation to the system. So whether you're in control of a station or trying to take over a station, or you're right at the bottom of the list of all the minor factions, what you do is changed by what state you're in and what you're trying to do. So it's not just a case. So we'll sort of commonly tell our commanders, look, leave this type of mission alone completely. We don't want that to be done. These are the type of missions to pick up. So at the moment, we're in a state of war in a system called WISE 0855-0714. So there are missions for Hutton Truckers in there for cargo missions and things like that, but they won't actually make a difference to what we're doing. And that was the one bit of information we hadn't actually had that first chart gives us. So we now know that the commanders should go into the conflict zones and do fighting, which we knew was good, but also only pick up combat missions and actions. Now the actions bit is the bit we're a little bit grey on that Michael hasn't come back and clarified. But so we're ignoring trade missions and things like that at the moment because we know those won't make a difference to our attempts to win the war.
Okay, so 300 missions, spreadsheets coming out of your ears and your assholes to find out information that the devs maybe should have already given us. I mean, is that bad design, bad communications on the part of Frontier, or have you enjoyed this?
Yes, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
And so when we delivered the Hutton trophy mug to Frontier a few months ago, so I was one of the people that was lucky enough to go and deliver it, and we went out for lunch with Zach, Johnny Watts, who we gave the trophy to, so he's the chief creative officer, and Mike Brooks. They took us out for lunch and just had a chat. And one of the things we were chatting to Mike Brooks about this, and they've deliberately left the background simulation vague because they don't want it. So I'm going to say they don't want it turning into a pure spreadsheet numbers thing. So all our spreadsheet is doing is tracking it so we can get an idea of what is good, but we don't know how good actions are. We just know those actions have a positive impact. So they were deliberately trying to avoid it just being a pure numbers game. And I think they want some mystery to it, so it's not just clear cut, because in theory, if they're simulating human populations, then it's not going to be completely clear cut, and different things happen. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's some form of random element in there as well, or potentially control that they might be doing. I saw a post on Reddit yesterday that is replied from one that some of the systems are classed as protected systems. So a lot of the Fed players are nervous that we're expanding because we're very near Sol, and they think we're going to try and take over Sol. But that's classed as a protected system by Frontier, and there was a post that Mike Brooks came back with saying any expansion attempts into there, yes, it is technically possible for players to take over that, but it would require a massive concerted effort of a huge number of players and for us to then approve it. But it's not completely locked off, so Akanar and Sol and all of the key systems aren't completely locked off, but they would require a massive group of players to actually do it. So it's not necessarily something that we're interested in at all, although being in charge of Sol would be quite cool.
Okay, so, I mean, when I was reading over the information, one of the things that sort of stood out for me is obviously that when we go through these expansion phases and then we have to scout around the surrounding systems to see if there's, if our influence has got us to the point where we can start doing missions in other systems and try and build up our influence on that jump from system to system seems to be completely random and potentially can jump us into a system, as Michael Brooks was saying it, that it could possibly be very, very difficult for us to keep. So it could be part of a faction that is completely the diametric opposite to what we put down. So if we've put down we want to be a democracy, and we go into either an anarchist system or an imperial system, actually trying to hang on to that system would take a ridiculous amount of resources and effort on our part. And is that a good thing, that random element that we suddenly appear in that system, where actually tactically, if you were thinking it through, you would never have chosen to go into that particular system, let alone have to fight and then keep it?
What, like the system that we expanded into?
Like the system we're in at the moment, yeah, absolutely.
It's even worse than Alpha Centauri. So it's not quite random. So what we've been able to work out from speaking to because there are other player groups doing what we do, but have been doing it for much longer. So we've been chatting to some other groups that are already in control of 8 systems to get some information from them. And there was a great post on the forums by a commander called Walt. I can't remember his surname. Who if you Google Elite Dangerous background simulation to minor factions, there's a great forum post with a lot of information in there. You can control where you go into. But it requires a hell of a lot of effort. So what it looks like, what we know, or what it appears to be, is you go into the nearest, it picks the nearest systems first. So no one's expanded more than a 30 light year range from what we've been able to work out. But it bases it on near systems and the number of factions that are already in that system. So if a system's full and we think the full limit is 7 minor factions, then you can't expand into that system. So one of the advanced techniques that I've read about, and probably requires a hell of a lot of effort, is if you want to control where you go to, you start supporting other factions in other systems to expand. So these could, in theory, be player factions, or they could just be NPC factions. And you help them expand into the systems that you don't want, and therefore you block that system from being able to expand into it. So you help. So if you see there's a system near us that I'm sure we'll get next. It's called Luham 16. It's even worse than the other 2 systems we've got. But if we got that one blocked by helping other minor factions expand into that one, and they had the maximum 7, then we couldn't expand into that. So you can, in theory, control, or not accurately control, but you can certainly influence where you will turn up to next. But I think that requires a huge amount of concerted effort of monitoring all of those systems. I mean, we have stats on the nearby systems, on traffic reports to help us try and tell if new players are coming in. But I think going to that level requires a dedicated group of players. Now, the Hutton Truckers are fantastic, but we do a lot. The background simulation is not what we're all about. We'll do as you know, we'll do convoys, we'll do mug runs, we'll do community goals, and so we're helping with when participating with other player groups. So if we were going to do it, I'm sure we could, but I don't think we're at that level, certainly not at the moment, to focus on that. So our current ultimate aim is we want a system with a large landing pad so people in Anacondas can actually dock. That's all we want. There are a few near where we are, but there are also some more rubbishy systems just with outposts, which wouldn't surprise me if that's where we get put next.
Just for those people that are interested in looking up that forum post, it was a Walter Kremien,
That's it.
Kremien, who's done quite a bit of information posting on the background simulation. But just going back to the point that you raised at the beginning in terms of those people that are listening to the show who think actually, maybe I fancy putting together a minor faction, maybe we could get involved with this. What sort of criteria do Frontier developments have to accept or reject an application? Do we know that information?
Yeah. So I sent them. I haven't got it to hand, but it was just literally there was an email to, I think it was like to community or groups at frontierdevelopments.co.uk. There is a forum post by Zach and Ed on it of how to apply, but they want a name of your faction, where you want to be based, what kind of sort of government you are. So. Democracy, anarchy, whatever you want, whether you're aligned to any of the not powers as in power play powers, but whether you're aligned to the Feds or the Alliance or the Imperials, and then a description of your group, because that description eventually will appear in the game if someone clicks on the minor faction, and where you want to be based. They then review it. I'm guessing depending on where you are, they'll talk to it. It wouldn't surprise me if some of them go up to Mike Brooks's level to look at see if it's going to have an impact on what he's got planned for the ongoing background story. I'm sure with ours going into Alpha Centauri, it's like, well, they're close to Sol. Is that going to be an issue or not? We're also slap bang in the middle of all three powers in power play, which causes us some issues. So the requirements are relatively slim. I mean, ours went through quite quickly. I think Frontier wanted us to do one just after the stuff we did with all the sort of the Hut and Mug community goal and stuff like that. So ours went through relatively quickly. I know some others have had back and forth conversations, and a couple of others seem to just got ignored. I think Frontier might have actually lost some of those requests because I saw an email asking for them to be resubmitted. So there are loads. There are people that are much more expanded than us. I know in the last newsletter they listed all the ones that have got 8 or more systems and hinted that one of those might be turned into a power. I think that's not an automatic process. I think that's definitely a decision by Frontier, and they manually will turn a faction into a power. They haven't given any guidelines or rules over what it is, so I think it's their sort of arbitrary decision.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, looking at this as sort of a broader picture for those people that aren't getting involved with it. Experiences with the likes of EVE Online, for example. This is all starting to sound a little bit like big player bases and lots of people trying to flip systems and blockade systems. Is there anything that people need to be concerned about in terms of if Frontier developments decide to take this further? I mean, what sort of advantages can people have to owning these systems? What sort of benefits can players get by being part of the group?
Not massive, in all fairness, that we've seen. So, I mean, you become allied with the minor faction, so everything shows green on the radar, and I think you'll get but with any minor faction, not just a player minor faction, as you build up your reputation and your influence with that minor faction, you'll get access to better and bigger missions. But that applies to whether you apply to sort of the big sort of galactic powers of the Imperials or the Federals, or you're working with a minor faction. So we haven't seen any massive tangible benefits. So if players don't want to do it, absolutely you don't need to do it. The only thing I think players potentially need to be cautious of is if you're going into a conflict zone and it happens to be so one of the minor powers is trying to take over a station or is at war with another minor faction, then just be careful, because if you're going into there and it is a player-supported minor faction, you may well make sure you pick the right side, because you may come up against a hell of a lot of commanders, which is what we've seen recently. So in the war that we've going on as Wise, there's a lot of commanders coming in because there was a capital ship there. So I think people want to come along and fight for the Feds. we're trying to be nice and saying, look, we're telling people what we're doing in the in-game chat and saying, look, look, you're happy to swap sides and come and fight for us, but if you don't, we will have to attack. And we tend to try and strip their shields and then give them another warning, but if they don't, then we will. But it's all in the conflict zone. We feel as if we're being reasonably fair. And we do try and do it in open all the time as well. So we're trying to be open and let players come in. If people want to play along and come along and oppose us, absolutely fine.
I know Hutton Truckers is quite sort of multinational in terms of how many different countries we have representing, but that sounds like an awfully British way of doing combat.
No,
it sounds awfully polite.
Well, no. So Commander Michelle, who was leading some of the charges, she's based in the US, and she was firing off warning shots and everything. I mean, admittedly, she was quite intimidating because she was in a fully armed cutter. So if you could come up against one of those, Corvette. So I got it wrong. Fully armed Corvette. It is slightly intimidating, but it is very multinational. We've got, people in all regions that we've got. All over Europe, Australia, New Zealand. We've got the night shift that covers a large part of the US. It helps being in such a large group, but yeah, it is good fun, and we are trying to be polite. If people want to come along and oppose us, there's Reddit posts we see occasionally where people are appearing to be intimidated by us, but it's like we've got 2 outposts in one system and we can't even take over the third one. So I don't think the Federation needs to be intimidated by our expansion attempts. But there were a number of calls on. We were seeing a couple of threads on Reddit where people are calling all Federation people to come and try and stop us. So we tend to jump on those threads and just shout for the mug all over them to see if we can smother them.
Okay, well let's wrap up this particular topic around background simulation. Is there anything else that that I might have missed that you want to just sort of cover off? Is there anything if people want to get involved in it? Is there any sort of good resources that they can go and do? Any videos that you could direct them to? Or
so the best place I would start is looking at that forum post by Walt. It's a really good place to start. If you're looking at going at it and seeing what you can do, I would, if you want to do it, our recommendation would be plan where you pick your system. Don't pick one in the middle of the bubble where you've got all the power play around you. So there are groups that have deliberately picked systems right on the edge of the bubble where they've got low player traffic, so they can get a lot more accurate information because no one else is flying there. So one of the issues with the play model is because people can play in open, and we try and do that all the time, but we could be being undermined in solo or in private groups and never see those players. So it's quite tricky to work out if our actions are actually having an effect. And I think that was one of the reasons of Michael's post was I think they're getting a lot of bug reports and people saying, oh, this is bugged and this is bugged. So I think he's tried to explain, look, this is how some of it works, and what you're raising as bugs aren't bugs. You're hitting the game, and someone might be opposing you, so your influence isn't increasing because there's more of them. I would like to see some more information presented in the game. So in combat zones, I don't think it'd be stretching too much to say, okay, to see how many combat bonds that we've claimed as Hutton Truckers and the other team have. So we could say, okay, we've claimed 14 million in the last 24 hours, but they've claimed 28 million, and then you'd know potentially that you actually are being actively opposed by other groups. So that would be a good ad, I think.
Yeah, and certainly Michael said that when Horizon seasons are all sort of wrapped up, one of the things they are hoping to do is that they're not going to really reveal any more detailed information around the background simulation in terms of analytics or numbers, but they are going to try and do something that makes it easier for the player base to actually follow what the hell's going on. Obviously change the UI or change some sort of graphics to represent the data in a way that people can actually follow what's happening. Which it's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if people are interested in it, I'm Commander Spike in game. Friend me, send me some in-game chat. I'm on Andrew Craib on Facebook, so I'm more than happy to answer any questions of what we know. I'm not pretending to be an expert at all, but we've got some data that we've gathered, and we're chatting to other player groups to see their experience, to try and work out where the bugs actually are. So hopefully some of the groups that are actively working on this can gather some sort of data that we can actually give to Frontier to get them to confirm, are we just hitting bugs, or are we actually just hitting other players, but players actually actively opposing us? And it'd be good to be able to easily identify that.
Okay, and obviously Hutton Truckers is the group that Lave Radio is fully behind. How can people join Hutton Truckers if they want to? Looking at the bunch of reprobates on there doesn't seem to be any sort of entrance exam. There doesn't seem to be any sort of quality control as to who you guys let in.
We have one very loosely applied rule of you must have at least gone to Hutton once and listened to our radio station while you're doing it. But if people want to join in, so that we have a private group in game called Hutton Truckers. So there is a commander Hutton Truckers that I fly as. The group's basically there to identify which of the fellow truckers are online at time, because once you've got a private group, you can see who's online in that group or not. So it's there to help us track who's actually online, so we can have conversations and wing up with people. But we've got Hutton Orbital Radio Truckers on Facebook. There's www.huttonorbital.com, and then the in-game private group, and then just contact us anyway and come and join in the fun. And if people want to sort of us to help them on stuff, we're quite happy to work with other player groups. In our current conflict, we've had lots of the other groups that we've helped out on things on the radio station and in events that are all coming in to help us on our current conflict. So we're all about trying to interact with other groups, whether it's good stuff, because we do stuff with the code and some of the pirate groups that's all friendly, organised, and there's some good stuff going on.
Perfect. And I should probably say that you guys are normally hanging out on the Lave Radio TeamSpeak, which is laveradio.teamspeak3.com,
Yes.
and that's open for anybody wants to pop in there and just say hi. Okay, well, that's going to leave it. Let's leave it there for community. For the background simulation community groups and all that good stuff. Let's move on and find out actually what's going on in the community and give a few shout outs to a few notable things that are going on at the moment. The first one is a nice bit of comms chatter, and it was in the newsletter, and that is that for those people that are interested, there may have been the perfect racetrack discovered. Have you guys got into the whole SRV racing? Has anybody had a look at this and taken their ship down to have a go?
I've not had a proper race, but it does look awesome.
No.
It does. I mean, when I glanced at it in the newsletter, I thought somebody had found the Superman emblem on a planet, because that's at a glance what it looked like to me. But they're basically saying that this is the place to. Actually, it's not SRVs. This is the canyons that you should be flying your sidewinders around. Is that right? No.
Yeah, I mean, having driven around the bottom of a canyon, having driven around the bottom of a canyon in an SRV, they're very dark. I can't imagine wanting to. Let me just pull this up on. Here we go. So yeah, this is the surface feature that someone's found on a planet, and it is basically a sort of ring canyon that goes all the way around. It would be, you'd have to pick a very particular time of day if you wanted to do that in a buggy, because the bottom of that canyon is going to be in darkness a lot, and racing over terrain like that just with your headlights is going to be painful. Let's be honest. But actually, if you wanted to do an Independence Day style fighter flight through some canyons, that would be an excellent one to do it.
And having a look at it on your screen there, Jarvis, that looks nothing like the Superman emblem at all.
No, I don't know what you're talking about, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
No, absolutely nothing like it. So
New
let's
glasses
just
for
gloss
Foz,
over that.
please.
Oh, dear me. Okay. Someone keeps on. Well, lots of people in the chat tonight are shouting barnacles at me. Can someone please explain to me what it is? I mean, does it look like I've got barnacles growing on me, or what's the story here? What am I missing?
Well, the barnacles are looks like it's the next step in the unidentified artifact saga, and these seem to be special points of interest on planets. There's actually a frame taken from the Horizons launch trailer where you see an SRV looking through what looks like alien artifacts which have crashed onto a planet. The unidentified artifact people, and there are a lot of them out there. I've started off a full investigation into this. Now, the region of space that it can be found is the Pleiades system, aka the Seven Sisters. I apologize for my pronunciation. I am Glaswegian, really. So You'll always find them on a planet at a point of interest, and they are exceedingly rare. We've been told that they are in-game, but not a player hasn't found one yet. They are linked to the metal alloys, which I haven't had to come across yet. But they don't need a mission to find them either. So I think Crash has mentioned that this is the biggest needle in a haystack thing that we've come across so far, because considering that the Seven Sisters is light years and light years and light years and light years wide, and there's planets and planets within planets, well, good luck. I hope we get some clues soon. But it does seem to have captured the imagination, and people are really going for it.
Okay. So, conspiracy theories. So, it's good that the X-Files is coming back onto TV. I think there's a few people out there who this might appeal to.
Yeah, it needs to hold
so
off, though. I've got a couple of series left to go. I've been watching it from series 1. It's taken me a really long time. But
have you been going back through in order to get up for the mini-series, have you?
to be honest, I actually started watching it before the new series was announced. It's taken me a really long time. Mainly because various DVD players and Blu-ray players keep breaking on me. But yeah, although actually I think people need to brace for a little bit of disappointment, because I read the other day that actually this new run of the X-Files is only like a 6-episode.
Yeah, it's a
special.
mini-series.
It's a mini-series, and I think I've got my first season VHS upstairs in the attic,
Jesus.
and I
Season's
don't even
good.
have a VHS player.
I was really sorry. This is a massive tangent from Elite, but I was actually really worried about getting into the series that David Duchovny had left for, the one where Robert Patrick replaces him. And actually, after Series 7 not being that great, I'm actually finding Series 8 a bit of a breath of fresh air. It was quite good so far. So there you go.
Okay, and since you're the voice of reason on this podcast all of a sudden, how about you bring this back to unidentified artifacts?
I know,
It was
absolutely
just
nothing.
one thing that I was just going to raise one thing that I've heard is possible with them, and I know a commander has been doing this. So obviously, when you're undermining other factions, you take missions against them. One thing you can apparently do, and I've heard has been done, is because you can sell UAs on the black market, you can smuggle them into a system you're trying to do, and if you sell enough of them on the black market, they start to damage the station and start affecting the services a station has available.
Yes, that's a known effect of too many unknown artifacts on a station, isn't it?
Yeah, which is I mean, it's an absolutely brilliant way that's actually added into the game. I haven't got figures on how many you actually need to find and deliver, but I know systems have been, starports have been damaged by people selling too many of them.
Really? That's priceless. I'm going to have to look into that. That's a great game mechanic.
On the subject of priceless, can I just interrupt at this particular moment in time? I have a word of warning to go out to all commanders. Please, whatever you do, if you are using voice attack, please use headphones. Don't have all the sound coming out of your speakers. Mostly because there is a video that has been posted on the Elite Dangerous group in Facebook of, how should we put this, a prank, which involved someone was watching, filming someone leaving the station in their brand new Mint Asp, and unfortunately, the player group on TeamSpeak, someone said, "Oh, have you got TeamSpeak installed?" And they went, "Yeah, it's great. Yeah, boost." And it worked. It reminded me of the first time I ever saw the trial of the voice recognition software, and someone from the crowd shouted out, "Deltree star. Yes, yes," and it worked. Now there's one for the old
That's nerdy. You're going to have to explain that one for those people that don't know coding.
Well, Deltree star is a root in DOS. It's a command in DOS which basically will wipe the entire hard disk. Deltree, as in delete tree, star, and then it'll say, "Are you sure?" "Yes," and then there you go. And I'll say that the voice recognition software worked absolutely fine.
Haven't we already seen this? You know, haven't people already learnt their lesson? Because didn't the Kinect and Microsoft have this problem where
Yeah.
people were shutting down other people's Xboxes with certain commands? I'm a PlayStation guy, so I don't know. I do
Was it
remember
basically
laughing
people
my
were-
ass off at them.
Yeah,
it's the Xbox advert, and that's happened with us. We've got the Xbox advert which came on at Christmas, and you know you have Mister whoever's advertising, and he goes Xbox on, and of course everybody who's got an Xbox will switch on when it hears that advert.
Yeah, there was another thing where you
correct.
could set your
Yeah.
gamer tag to be Xbox shut down, and then if people were yelling at you, yelling your name in games, it would just turn their console off, which was quite funny.
That is what you call a good hack.
Oh dear, that's priceless. Okay, so if you have voice attack installed, people, make sure that your sound is not coming out over your speakers. Make sure you get the headset to avoid falling for the same voice attack prank. Excellent, I love it, brilliant. What else have we got to cover off? Distant Worlds Expedition. For those people that don't know, this is where over 600 pilots from across colonized space are joining together in a monumental effort to cross the galaxy as one unit to travel out to the farthest depths and catalog data on points of interest that travelers for years to come will talk about and visit. If you want to be part of that group, they kick off that on the 14th of January. And if you want to go to the relevant post, it's tinyurl.com/ed and then DWE for Distant Worlds Expedition. It was mentioned in the newsletter as well, but for those people that want to be explorers out there, if you want to have some friends, don't like the idea of being a solo explorer, then you can set out for the Distant Worlds Expedition with, I think, currently not over 600, it's over 700 people have signed up for this, yeah?
When we've had Ed and company doing a CQC live stream just before us, and they were saying that in this particular time, they've gone and bumped it over 700. Apparently, this was mentioned in PC Gamer, and as soon as it was mentioned in PC Gamer, the number of people signing up for it jumped by about 200.
Wow, okay. Brilliant. Well, it'd be nice because it's one of the elements of Elite Dangerous I really haven't got into. I haven't done my my pilgrimage down to Saga yet. Is exploring fun? I mean, obviously, Jarvis, you're doing some scouting for locations, but
Yeah, what I'm doing is not really exploring. I'm not very far from stuff that's going on.
It's tough. I did the GIMP run because after we sent the Hut and Truckers on it, I thought I had to do it. So it took me 6 weeks of. I don't get to play a massive amount, but it took me 6 weeks to get there and back. So it's part of it was quite enjoyable, but then part of that was just doing what is commonly referred to as honk, scoop, jump. Of just doing it as quickly as possible. If you want to get to Sad J quickly, so we had some commanders that a commander called BGT did the whole thing in less than 24 hours. So dropping off 19 mugs, but you can get to Sad J in less than 9 hours, I think, if you kit out the right ship. And he came back, but he took the short journey back of suiciding at the other end because he wasn't bothered about getting back with any data. But if you do, if you kit out the right ship and get an ASP with nothing in apart from effectively a A6 fuel scoop, which is quite expensive, you can get there in about 9 hours of gameplay. But you don't get to find anything. You don't get any exploration. So I found some stuff. I got my name against 3 Earth likes and got about 27 million for my 6-week trip.
Wow.
Yeah, you do, when you actually do come back. I mean, I had a target of heading out to PH2, which was Koi 3663, because that was one of the first planets ever discovered in the Goldilocks zone by Kepler. So that was one thing that I wanted to go and see. And on the way out there, yes, you are just basically honk, scoop, and jumping. And that's fantastic, that is. Until you get to what you want. I mean, obviously the honk is you're using your advanced scanner to see what's actually there. But what I did find was it was far nicer on the way back, just relaxing and then saying, "Oh, that's quite pretty. I'll have a quick look over there," or I'll try and scan this particular system. And of course, the first thing that you always do is when you look at your system map is you're looking for Earth lakes. It's the first thing you do. You're looking for anything that looks vaguely Earth-like. But I've discovered a couple of them. But I will say, when you're about 300, 400 light years out, and suddenly you see that first little other ship. The first ship that you see, your backside just goes, oh, is he going to attack? Because you suddenly realise how much is data that you have got and how much is it worth. And then the first time you see a hollow square is a bit interesting after that point. I was almost tempted to go solo all the way back when I first saw that, but thankfully the commander, whoever he was, didn't think I was interesting enough or wasn't into that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a bit flying without insurance until you finally drop your data load, if you like, in the closest available system.
And how do you normally find that? I mean, obviously there's a wonderful moment with the hollow square when you're light years away from civilization. Do people normally go out that far and then decide to pirate, or well, it can't be? It's got to be slim pickings out that far.
Oh yeah, there were some slim pickings, but there was one notorious incident of someone who did fly out to Sajay with the particular thing of pirating people when they got there. Or it wasn't even pirating, it was griefing. Basically, he found... I don't know who it was, but I think this one's gone down as an urban legend, unless you know different Andrew. But
I couldn't say, but I've heard enough stories that there was a commander in an Anaconda that was just parked up there for weeks. Of just attacking anybody that turned up. Which, while I disagree with his actions, it is slightly amusing that he's willing to commit that time that far out. Because if he dies, he's obviously knackered as well. He's got no number of hours just to get back there. But I don't know if he got any of the truckers when we were sending them out there. I think we had 54, 56 people did the run and dropped off a mug at Sajay.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that I do, I mean I always fly tooled up. There are some people that fly stripped down, absolutely bare, derated all the way, and then jump and try and get the biggest jump range they get. I don't trust anybody I meet out there, so I'm going tooled up, because if you're going to try and have a go, you're going to get a surprise, because I've got something to fight back with. Most people that do the quick run out there haven't got much to defend themselves with.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even so, if you're in an explorer ship and you meet an anaconda that's sat there like a big fat dragon sitting on a pile of gold, you ain't got a chance. You know?
Well, actually, you'd be surprised, because that anaconda has been out there for quite a while, and that means its internal structures has been hammered, and we've seen on the Hunt and Run that the internal hull value actually really makes a very big difference. So you can hit an anaconda, if you get the shields down and their internal hull structure is not that strong, then it crumples a lot easier than it normally would.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Would be good to fly a wing of 4 combat ships out there and see if you can find them. That would be, because they would then be terrified if you see 4 corvettes come out.
Or, the other way of doing it would, of course, to be teaming up with 700 plus other pilots and going out there as a big group. Oh, dear. So, okay, guys. Again, just that URL again. It's ED for Elite Dangerous and then DWE. And that'll take you to all the information on the Distance World expedition. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, and it sounds like it could be good fun, get yourself over there and sign up. One final thing for the community corner is the fuel rats. Colin, I believe you were following this one.
Yeah, you've got, because we're talking long distance, you've got to take your hats off to the fuel rats for doing this. They completed a rescue a couple of days ago, 36 hours ago, according to this. 2 fuel rats travelled 56,000 light years in 48 hours to rescue 1 pilot.
Whoa. Brilliant.
I know, he was travelling, the person was in, good grief, Plox YX-J A8-0 in order to rescue a stranded commander who will remain anonymous unless they de-anonymise themselves. and this beats the old record of almost double their longest rescue. So 2 fuel rats went out there. One was the backup fuel rat, and yeah, take your hats off for that. That's they do that. There's no reward. There's just the pleasure of making sure that a commander can come back home. So,
which is impressive. I mean, do we have the names of those 2 fuel rats? Do we have their commander names, just so we can give them a shout out? Nothing else, a shout out online, just to give them a bit of recognition.
well, I've got the Reddit commander names here. So we've got Commander Remye Zero and Commander Halo SOS or Halo SOS.
So Commander Halo SOS and Commander, what was the first one?
Remy Zero.
Remy Zero. Well, amazing effort, guys. Well done on that. I have to say, you're far more altruistic than I am, because I would just let him sit there until this ship fell apart. But having been rescued by the fuel rats myself, quite embarrassingly live on air, I have to say that these are an awesome bunch of guys and girls, probably. Hats off to you. Great community spirit. I say far more altruistic than I would be. Okay, I'm not sure if that's not it for all the stuff we need to cover on this particular episode. In case anybody else has anything they want to cover off or mention,
We have some shout-outs.
okay. Yeah, we do. So perfect, Jarvis. You start us out on those.
Oh, you would. Okay, on.
Sorry, I can actually.
Apologies
see on
if the
your
stream.
you're actually-
Apologies if the Twitch stream goes really boring for a minute. Yeah, we had a contact from a commander. I do not know. Someone's written over what I've written. No, okay, it's up there. So we had a message from someone. His name's disappeared from the chart. Could you give would you like to give people a news report about our faction? So they've made a little YouTube video, which is it's quite some interesting fiction around their faction that they're putting together. I won't go into it because it's an insane little thing to watch, but if you go to YouTube and search for the Conway Report 001 about the player group called Null, I believe, then yeah, go and watch that video. That's that one. Are you waiting for me to shout out in-game commanders? Because I am a long way from Lave. Okay, it would appear that Skype has died on me. So, are you guys
I'm
back?
We're
Excellent.
back.
Yay.
We're back.
Sorry, I was waiting for you to talk, and then I realised Skype was flashing red icons at me.
Yeah.
No, we're all
And
back.
because
Sorry
I'm-
about that.
Yes, that's fine. So I've done that one. I can't see in-game commanders because I'm a
Hello?
long way from Lave.
It's all right, Andrew.
think
We're all back. Mate. Yeah, we're all back. The other thing we should probably mention is that Mr. Stabler has also got a Kickstarter. Do you guys mention this Kickstarter last week?
I think we did.
Well, Mr. Stapler was on it. I thought he did.
Well, I literally, again, I've been working away. Andrew, you really need to sort out your keyboard, because we can hear you even if you can't hear us. Yeah, so John has actually launched his own. He's been brave. He's launched his own Kickstarter for a new first-person... Is it a first-person shooter? I don't know if you'd call the Quake game or a Doom game a first-person shooter.
It's a first-person
cool.
shooter with... I'll tell you what it comes
Magic.
across like. It comes across a little bit like... what's it called? Bomberman, but in first person. So you've got wizards, and they're kind of lobbing spells at each other and damaging the environment around each other and dropping each other through floors and all that kind of stuff.
So it's really a first-person speller then.
Do you know what? You say that. I've played a first-person speller. Now, given I'll mention this, given that I have a reputation for having played every game that ever seems to have been released. Sega released a version of the House of the Dead called The Typing of the Dead, which was a zombie-based typing tutor. And basically, if you haven't played it, it's the same game as the House of the Dead 3, I think. But when the zombies shamble towards you, they have a little sign around their neck with a word on it, and you have to touch type the word that's around the zombie, and that kills them. And then there are bosses that basically run at you, kind of yelling the lyrics to Gilbert and Sullivan operas. And you have to sort of type it all before they can kill you. So yeah, that would be a first-person speller.
We should probably say
It's a
the
fun
name
party
of John's
game,
Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's called Runes of
As
Anarchy.
we haven't yet. Yeah, so Runes of Anarchy. Ridiculous magical multiplayer is what he's calling it. So it's first-person action game featuring frantic magic and a hilariously absurd multiplayer experience. If you want to check that out, try and see if there's a small URL for. Well, just search for Runes of Anarchy on Kickstarter, or Google it. He's got 24 days to go, and he needs a little bit of love, I reckon. So we need to try and get the word out for him. Okay, any other shout-outs that people have got to mention?
Well, I'd just like to say something. There is an Elite Dangerous writing contest in progress at the moment that Dale has put up on Reddit. So if you go along to the Elite Dangerous Reddit group, you will find as stickied at the very top the Elite Dangerous writing contest, which is no more than 600 words. Your story may include characters from the Elite Dangerous lore, but it must be about an original character of your own creation, which could be your commander, it could be anybody you like. So the entries must be submitted before the 24th of January, so good luck.
Great stuff. Anything else?
Well, there's also the CQC competition that's got a very big prize. They were doing, Ed and company were doing a live stream before us about CQC, where they were beginning to tell people about the heats and the processes that they were going to put into place for people to enter this competition. Unfortunately, due to the fact I was putting the kids to bed, I missed most of that bit. But the CQC stuff, I must admit, I'm actually getting really into at the moment, but I don't think I'll be anywhere near good enough to enter the competition.
Well, I have to say, Colin, as far as Lave Radio is concerned, you have to enter Obi-Wan Kenobi, your only hope, because nobody else has got into CQC at all.
Well, if anybody's watched the last Top Shift video where I did take a look at both the new fighters and CQC, you'll probably notice that you've got nothing to worry about.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up there then. So that's it for another episode of Lave Radio. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, then you can email info@laveradio.com, Facebook/Lave Radio, @Lave Radio on Twitter, and if you want to, you can join our Skype chat channel by adding Fozza101 to your Skype contacts. If you like, you could join our TeamSpeak server where commanders from obviously Lave Radio and also Hutton Truckers come to hang out and chat. That's at laveradio.teamspeak3.com. And we record this podcast live on a Tuesday evening at 8:20. That's British time, and it's streamed out on laveradio.com/live. Thank you very much to Mr. Jarvis, to Mr. Ford, and obviously to Mr. I'm gonna really cock up your name, Craib. Commander Spike, Andrew Craib from Hutton Truckers, who's also joined us for this evening. That's a great time for you to come back. What's the correct pronunciation of your surname?
Craib.
Craib, excellent. I knew I got it wrong. And to Andrew Craib for coming on and helping us through the wonderful minefield that is the background simulation. That's it for this particular episode of Lave Radio. Until next time, fly safe, and if you can't do that, fly dangerous.
Is your life like this?
Sounds like someone having an orange inserted. Need a safe word.
Space can be low.
I'm gonna see the galaxy.
Ah, damn it. No worries, guys. Hold the fort for 2 seconds. I'll be right back.